If you're interested in crowdfunding, then maybe you saw the news last month that StartEngine, which is, depending on which metrics you follow, either the number one or number two equity crowdfunding platform in the world, just merged or acquired SeedInvest, which is one of the oldest and also largest platforms for equity crowdfunding in the world. Doing some digging, it looks like StartEngine acquired SeedInvest for about $24 million. And if you dig into SeedInvest's numbers, they've got about 700,000 users on the platform, and I would imagine users are those that have like signed up, set up an account, but not necessarily invested. And they've helped raise over $450 million for companies on that platform. So, largely like one of the top 5 players historically, and I think at some points in the history used to be actually the largest, or definitely one of the largest equity crowdfunding platforms. So super interesting that they ended up getting acquired by StartEngine. I think part of what happened was SeedInvest was actually acquired several years ago by a Web3 crypto company called Circle. And Circle announced basically a year after buying the asset and fully rolling it into their business that it didn't really fit with their strategic initiatives anymore and were looking for a seller. And that was back in 2020. So, I mean, this asset's been on the block for quite a while. And, the data, that it's reported that StartEngine ultimately ended up acquiring SeedInvest for about $24 million, which, feels like a pretty low valuation, frankly, particularly when you compare it to StartEngine's valuation of $1.3 billion, which they're currently raising, which, here's my little disclaimer. This is not investment advice. Go do your own due diligence and your own research and make your own investment decisions. But nonetheless, I just think it's interesting that StartEngine, if you contrast StartEngine in terms of size, they've raised about $650 million for their startups on their platform. They have about 1 million users in total. And so, there's this like big delta between StartEngine, which is not that much bigger, but has a $1.3 billion valuation, and SeedInvest, which, they effectively just acquired for $25 million. Now, granted, like, it was a bit of a fire sale probably. It's been on the market for a long time. Circle was just looking to liquidate it and get it off their books and probably free up some cash heading into this, crypto winter that we're currently in. So, I mean, there are some dynamics there at play, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting data point, that kind of the delta in valuation between those two. The other thing is that this is an all stock transaction based on what I've been able to find out. And so StartEngine's not even forking out their own cash into the deal. So if it's true that this all stock transaction, they picked it up for $24 million worth of StartEngine stock, then Circle, which is the current owner in the business, is going to end up owning like less than 2% of StartEngine. And they didn't even get any cash out of the deal. So yeah, maybe it's just that SeedInvest was burning a lot of cash and they needed a way to get it off their books, but they didn't want to just shut down the business yet. They wanted to retain some value for it. So ultimately, that's probably, if I had to like read through the tea leaves, probably what happened. I did think it was interesting that Marks, who's the CEO of the company, who incidentally is also one of the co-founders of Blizzard Activision, basically came out and said, yep, we did this consolidation. We think, there's about 70 other broker dealers out there that do equity crowdfunding. It's really costly to get your license. It's really costly to maintain that license. He's like, and I anticipate there's going to be a lot more consolidation in this industry. And, he's like, and we intend to be the consolidator. I mean, they really want to be kind of the big behemoth, and they pound their chest a lot about being the largest in the space. This is kind of interesting. And then for those of you that really like my Shark Tank React videos, it's kind of fun too that Mr. Wonderful is an advisor of StartEngine. So, look, I think StartEngine, this definitely makes them the largest player in the space by combining these two businesses and in terms of this many users and this many startups historically funded. I think the other thing that's interesting is if you take this $24 million number that StartEngine is effectively paying for SeedInvest, even though it's not cash, if you take that $24 million and divide it by the 700,000 users that SeedInvest is bringing to the table, that comes out to about $35 per user. And, if you look at how StartEngine makes money, they basically, if each of those 700,000 users from SeedInvest end up investing about $1,000 on average, then that'll generate about $35 in fee income back to StartEngine, which is enough to basically offset the purchase price. And I've got to imagine that, there was some pretty simple calculus that was being done there in terms of deciding how much to pay to Circle to buy SeedInvest. Some other things that I think will be interesting is will this kind of market dominance really play a role in cementing StartEngine as the dominant leader in the space and leave WeFunder and Republic behind? Or is the reality that SeedInvest was already kind of on their way out? I mean, part of it is it's hard to know how active their user base actually is. And it could be the case that a lot of them aren't as active as they used to be. Because ultimately, if they were that active and that successful at, bringing on new companies and startups and helping them raise money, then why would Circle sell it for so little, right? Why sell it at all if it's profitable and doing well? And my guess is that SeedInvest was probably struggling to keep up with the StartEngines, Republics, and WeFunders of the world who have raised substantial amounts of capital. I mean, Republic in 2021 had 2 funding rounds and raised quite a bit of money. I know WeFunder has raised a decent amount of money, and Republic or StartEngine has also been raising money on their own equity crowdfunding campaign. So, yeah, I mean that's my feel. I think ultimately it's going to come down to one of those 3 players to become the dominant one. And ultimately, it would be good if there are multiple players at the end of the day, because each one solves its own little niche, if you will. To me, having worked closely with WeFunder and Republic, I've found that Republic tends to have the highest standards in terms of the companies that they will let on the platform, which can kind of cut both ways. And sometimes that means that they get some really high quality companies, and probably the average company is pretty high quality, but then they also lose some. I've made introductions to them and referred businesses over to them, and the businesses have come back and said, it's just too tedious. We'd rather go with a simpler platform like WeFunder or StartEngine. And so they've gone with one of those other ones. And so StartEngine and WeFunder tend to be a little bit more of the Wild West. I think StartEngine, frankly, sits somewhere in between the two. WeFunder is a little bit of hey, we'll make it super easy to be on our platform. And so they get really, really amazing companies on there and, not so great companies on there. And there's a wide distribution of quality. Whereas, a Republic probably has a much tighter distribution of quality. They don't have as many really amazing companies. They don't really need their platform on there, but they also don't have as many companies that aren't super interesting. And I think based on my experience, StartEngine probably sits somewhere around in the middle. It also feels like StartEngine, and maybe this is due to their ties with Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, tends to be a little bit more consumer products oriented than the other platforms. I know the one investment I made on there was a consumer products deal a number of years ago. So anyways, it is fun though to see this space continue to grow. I think consolidation is inevitable. That's kind of the cycle that all of these businesses go through. You start with lots of players and everyone's trying to vie and figure out, what's the best way to build this product and sell to customers and so on and so forth. And then over time, leaders start to emerge based on better execution or better product mix or better marketing strategy or what have you. And as they emerge, they get bigger and bigger and they start snapping up some of these smaller players and consolidating the industry. And that's the way it is in pretty much all markets. So not a surprising case to see it happen here. And, I tend to agree with Marks. I think we're going to see more of it over the coming years. Anyways, tell me below in the comments what you think. Which one of these is your favorite platform? Do you like WeFunder? Do you like StartEngine? Are you bummed about SeedInvest getting merged in or not? Do you think it's good for the industry? And then, of course, check out more of my videos. When will valuations get back to their 2021 levels? Thanks.